My jealous sister attempted to sabotage my baby shower by presenting fake paternity test results. To everyone's shock, her husband then unexpectedly handed her divorce papers right there in front of everyone. My jealous sister tried to ruin my baby shower by revealing fake paternity test results. In a shocking turn of events, her husband suddenly served her with divorce papers right there in front of everyone. Daisy and I are close in age. She's 32 and I am 31. Growing up, my sister would always tell me that she was jealous of me and that she didn't like me. This hurt me deeply because she was my only sibling, and I loved and admired her so much. I always looked up to her and wanted to be close, but she often pushed me away. When she was happy, she could be a fantastic sister, fun, imaginative, and full of life. But in arguments, she would really do hurtful things, and other times she even tried to hurt me physically by pulling my hair, pushing, or punching me. Our parents always reprimanded her because of this, since she was supposed to be the older sister. I tried to explain, despite all this, how much I admired her and wanted to be closer to her. But she seemed to have a distaste for kissing and cuddling, all because of her very cruel supposed crimes she committed. Daisy always was a very lively and outgoing person. She was passionate about the arts, makeup, and fashion, things that she was really good at and that made her special in so many ways. Daisy liked to play with her hair and tattoos. My mom sent me to school earlier than most, and as I had a more academic mind, Daisy and I ended up in the same grade. Fortunately, we weren't in the same class. Daisy didn't take this too well and tended to see me as a competition, since I was more of an academic. Still, the bar wasn't that high. Most students hated doing homework, so my average grades looked good by comparison. I generally got a mix of A's and B's, while most others got B's and C's. Daisy was good at art, drama, cooking, sewing, and dancing. I liked the violin, which my mom pushed me to take up, and later on, I learned some French and Korean on my own. Daisy, on the other hand, was deep into the drama department in school and spent her evenings preparing for plays. Things turned around for her following a significant event. After a clash with some colleagues, Daisy was dropped from the drama group. All this began when she realized that her boyfriend was having an affair with a different girl from the same department. Out of rage, Daisy confronted the girl, assaulted her physically, and went as far as burning the girl's handbag. This situation worsened as Daisy was suspended from school and nothing more serious happened beyond suspension. After the school incident, my parents met with the principal and paid the girl. To this day, I am not quite sure what happened, but I do know Daisy had to repeat 11th grade. Our parents were livid and lectured her to no end, grounding her until she was 18 years old. This incident put a real damper on her relationship with them, and their disappointment in her lasted a long time. As for me, the longest lasted 7 months, and my sister had a lot to do with that. I wasn't really looking for the one, but every time I would find somebody that I liked, Daisy would somehow get in the way. One time I was seeing this guy, Derek. We were at 5 months, getting kind of serious-like. Then, out of the blue, Derek blocked me from all platforms, phone, messaging apps, and even Facebook. The only way to reach him was in person, so I decided to go to his house and confront him. When I showed up unannounced, Derek looked surprised. I asked him why he had blocked me and what was going on. After hesitating, he confessed that my sister had contacted him. She had expressed concerns and then began to tell him completely made-up stories about my past in order to make me look bad. I was overwhelmed with frustration and disbelief. I pushed Derek to tell me more about what my sister had said. Reluctantly, He told me that she claimed I had been talking to other guys while we were dating, and even accused me of sending some kind of explicit pictures to one of my male friends. I was totally mortified when I heard this. I instantly went into trying to explain my side of the story, vehemently denying the accusations. But Derek appeared both hesitant and confused. "What would your sister lie about you and fabricate something so serious?" he asked. Fighting tears in my eyes, I had to explain how my sister was always jealous of me and had a habit of sabotaging my relationships with people. But I did not think she could stoop so low as to spread outright lies about me. Therefore, no matter how much time and pain I took to clarify the truth, the damage had already been done. Derek admitted that, though he could understand my situation, he was uncertain about continuing our relationship. He didn't want to be tied to the drama involved in dealing with someone like Daisy. Although I understood where he was coming from, it broke my heart. If I had a choice, I would not want to be associated with her either. Feeling utterly devastated and frustrated, I left without any idea how to make amends for the damage my sister's actions had caused me. I confronted my sister about what she had done. After some heated argument, Daisy finally told me that the reason behind her actions was due to insecurity and jealousy. She said she hated how easy it was for me to be able to date good-looking guys, and she thought I was too good for Derek, so she made up those lies to push him away. Her words made me angry, and it became painfully clear that her behavior was rooted in her unresolved issues. My mom and dad let her have it, pointing out how wrong she was, but it seemed like the deed didn't matter to her at all. In her opinion, she had been able to do what she intended to do. Derek and I weren't together anymore. The incident really made me come to the realization that any sort of healthy, lasting relationship I ever wanted would need to start with finding space between us. Daisy and I used to share a dream of studying abroad. She had so much potential, but instead of following her true passions, she gave in to our dad's advice and studied computer science in our home country. Watching her settle for something she didn't truly want just made me all the more determined not to let anyone else, even my parents, dictate my choices. I worked hard to find a scholarship to study overseas. Financial constraints proved an insurmountable hurdle in the beginning, though, so I enrolled at a university here in our homeland, selecting a field that interested me. However, my wish to pursue education abroad did not disappear, and so after a year, I continued the search for opportunities and finally got one, a scholarship that enabled me to continue my studies abroad. My parents were devastated by my decision to move so far away. On my last night at home, Daisy suddenly apologized for everything she had done to me over the years. I don't know what made her do it. Perhaps the thought of having our parents all to herself now that I was leaving. Not wanting to carry any bitterness with me, I forgave her and left the past behind. Living abroad, I went through a huge transformation, lost weight, met amazing people, and found my personal style. Gaining that confidence, graduation was like such a big accomplishment, but it was tough the whole next year trying to look for a job. Finally, things started falling into place. I eventually got a good job and settled into my new life. Meanwhile, back home, she finished her bachelor's degree and told me about her wish to do her master's in my country. I told her to try and apply, but no matter how many times she tried, her scholarship applications kept getting rejected, which made her frustrated. At one point, Daisy came to visit me and stayed for 10 days so I could show her around. She noticed how much I had changed, and whenever she made sly comments about my clothes or hair, I no longer paid attention to her. It felt strange how she still tried to control how I dressed or behaved in public, especially when we went out for lunch or spent time together. When I would have friends over, she would often ridicule them, telling me how I should find better people to hang out with. Other times, when I was having fun with my friends, She would suddenly act distant or moody without explanation. One day, I took her to show my workplace and took her around my office. She did look quite surprised at how big and well-established it was. I was excitedly explaining to her how the job had given me so many opportunities and really helped me grow in the field. But then came the unexpected response from her. She went totally silent and did not seem happy for me at all. Instead of congratulating me on my achievements, Daisy turned the conversation around to herself, saying how she envied me for such opportunities and regretting several decisions she had made previously. At dinner that evening, she talked about extending her stay and living with me for some more months. But I knew it was impossible for me to bear her constant judging anymore. I told her politely that if she wanted to stay longer, it was better for her to get her own accommodation, since it was obvious she had some unsettled issues with me, which she would never confront. That's when Daisy lost her temper. She started yelling, saying that she was fed up with me in her life because every person compared her to me and made her feel that whatever she did was never good enough. I quietly reminded her that I had never done that to her, and added that, on the contrary, she was the one who had made me feel like a loser all along. Daisy then snapped, saying I wasn't anything special, and that she could have done the same things I did if she'd had the same opportunities. Well, at that point, I told her the truth, that we both had the same opportunities growing up. The difference was that I chose to apply to universities abroad and worked hard to secure a scholarship, while she was now struggling to secure one and blaming me for her own decisions. This made Daisy very mad, and she called me a spoiled brat, even going to the extent of saying that she wished I was never born. Her harsh words really hurt me, so I got up from the table and shut myself in my room. 2 days later, Daisy flew back home without apologizing to me, and finally I was able to breathe a sigh of relief. I finally realized just how much Daisy and I had changed over the years, and I had started to get tired of her. I finally met my boyfriend, Edward, who was also in the same line of work as me. We would cross paths often through mutual friends, and we met at a gathering where we had a few drinks. It was nice to talk to someone who understood what I was doing, and at first I thought that we could just be friends. But Edward showed interest in me and asked me out. The next day we started dating, and the relationship lasted another 2 years. Edward finally proposed to me. I became close to his family because they were in the same country, and Edward had met my parents through video calls. We were in the middle of planning our wedding when I got another job offer to triple what I was making at that time. The only drawback was that the new position would be in my home country. I spoke with my fiancé about the job, and we both felt that this was an opportunity for me to change my life, so I took the job. That instigated moving back home, and finally, my family got to meet Edward. My parents warmed up to him fast, and now my dad spends his Sundays golfing with him? My new job was going well, and eventually, Edward found a new one too. It was during this time that Daisy started ignoring me completely. She flatly refused to meet either me or Edward, much to my parents' insistence. She had an excuse for each occasion why she couldn't come and meet us. Inasmuch as we haven't spoken for so long, I understood her avoidance, and quite frankly, I didn't mind, because I was afraid she might wreck my relationship with Edward too, like she had wrecked all my past relationships. After a few months of settling into my new life, Edward and I decided to get married. We booked flights for his parents and grandparents so they could be with us for our big day. Edward and I wanted a small, intimate wedding with just close family and friends, followed by a short honeymoon as both of us were busy with work. We decided to hold the wedding in my parents' spacious backyard, which made them very happy. Our grandparents, parents, siblings, and friends all gave touching speeches, showering us with love and blessings. The only missing person was Daisy. She said she had picked up some sort of fever, so that is the reason she did not attend. The food was superb, and everyone danced until morning. It was quite a party, and Edward and I enjoyed it tremendously. Immediately following the wedding, we took off for our honeymoon. A week later, when we came back, I was at my mom's place showing her some wedding pictures, and surprisingly appeared. Just as I was telling Mom how happy our grandparents had been at the wedding, Daisy interrupted me and asked if Edward and I were having any money problems. I laughed and told Daisy that I had a much better paid job now than previously, and that Edward was doing well too. But she teased me, saying that my getting married in our parents' backyard might indicate otherwise. My mom immediately came to my defense and told Daisy there was nothing wrong with having a wedding in the backyard and that I had wanted a smaller, more intimate celebration which made sense for us. I agreed with Mom, and I added how Edward and I liked things simple and unextravagant with our higher incomes. We believed in making good use of our money. That made Daisy even more furious. She accused me of trying to show off and even lied about my salary. Then I shook my head and told her I didn't have to prove anything to her. I reminded her we were adults now and that she needed to stop assuming about me and lying about me. I also brought up how glad I was that she hadn't shown up at our wedding. This really upset Daisy, and she stormed out of the house crying. My mom tried to calm things down, but Daisy wasn't interested in listening. She told my grandparents and some of my cousins about our fight, that I had mentioned being glad that she did not come to my wedding. I actually did send her a text apologizing for the events that occurred, but she never responded. For all these years, I tried to keep out of her way as much as possible, although we had some good times. Edward then met Daisy and, well, he did not like her from the get-go. Mainly because Daisy would tease him a lot. For example, Edward and I love watching Disney movies, which others find boring, and Daisy said that maybe Edward wasn't manly enough. I was so offended by this comment, and later on, Daisy apologized to both of us. It also came to my attention that on several occasions, Daisy had been telling my mother she felt Edward was trying to control my life. When confronted about this by my mother, she stated that every time she met Edward, she just got a bad feeling about him. One afternoon, when my mother and Daisy came over to my apartment for lunch, Daisy started telling us about the problems she was having with her boyfriend Charlie. As it turned out, Charlie had moved in with Daisy but lost his job after 2 months. Since then, he hadn't been working and wasn't contributing financially to the household. I told Daisy sternly that she needed to ask Charlie to leave since he wasn't helping out in any way. To that, Daisy suddenly pointed out that if I made more than Edward, then didn't that mean I should throw him out too? I explained that while it was true I made more than my husband, Edward had a decent income of his own, and we both contributed to our household. He wasn't sitting around all day eating chips and playing games. My mother went along with me and added that Edward had even sacrificed some of his own career advancement so I could take this high-paying job. Daisy took offense to that and started saying that men should always earn more than women. She thought it strange that Edward was right with our setup. I warned Daisy that not all men are lowlifes like the ones she dated in the past, and that Edward loved me for who I was. Of course, Daisy did not listen to me and proceeded to marry Charlie, even though he was jobless at the time. Charlie had a very bad temper too, which he conveniently showed in full force on their wedding day. After we'd all had a bit too much to drink, Charlie began an uncalled-for fight with a waiter and was restrained by Daisy and some of Charlie's brothers. Very embarrassing. I was seriously worried about Daisy, though I knew she wouldn't listen to me, so I kept my mouth shut. As it went along, I came to realize that the fights between Daisy and Charlie were only getting worse. Every time they had a fight, he would throw her out of their house, and then she would come to stay at my parents' place. Both my mom and dad are worried about her, but Daisy doesn't even talk to them about it. One day, we heard from Charlie's mother that Daisy had apparently cheated on him with one of her co-workers. They had a huge fight over that incident. Though they did finally decide to try and work through their marriage, they even went to couples counseling. This year, I found out I was pregnant, and Edward and I were overjoyed. My mom and dad congratulated us and told me how proud they were to become grandparents. They said they would stick by me through anything. When Daisy found out about the pregnancy, she asked Edward and me about names that we liked and if we wanted her help. Edward and I had talked about a few names, but I didn't want to tell her because I knew how critical she could be. I told Daisino, and I made it very clear that we would not be sharing any names of the baby until the baby was born and the name was final. Daisy adamantly disagreed, saying we needed to consult with other family members so we could choose the best name for our baby. I told her we did not want anyone else getting in the way of the name selection since it was our baby and we wanted to choose the name. When it came to planning the baby shower, I did ask my mom to do everything. I trusted her judgment and was, quite frankly, not a big fan of planning. The only thing I did ask for was that my mom spread the word that I didn't really want any gifts because we really didn't know the baby's gender yet. I just wanted to enjoy spending time with my friends and gather tips about motherhood, since it had been such a long time since I'd seen them. I was relieved to find out that she had invited only my close friends, which was what I had wanted exactly. All were having soft drinks, and I was really enjoying the company of my pals. That is, until Daisy appeared wearing a shirt with the logo, Godmother-to-be. My eyes nearly bulged out of my head. There was no way on earth I was going to make her my baby's godmother. It was awkward because Daisy went around telling everyone how she always dreamed of being a godmother, but the galling thing about it all was she never even broached the subject with me. I had invited my husband, father, and Charlie to come over that afternoon because we were going to be able to find out what sex the baby was. When Edward and I cut the cake together, we were so excited and happy to discover we were having a boy. My eyes welled up with tears as my friends came up to hug me in celebration. But just as we were basking in that moment, Daisy suddenly stood up and said she had something very important to say. The room fell silent as everyone gave her their attention. She was very serious as she pulled out a paper and held it up for all of us to see. Daisy then announced that a few days ago I had gone for a paternity test and found out that Edward was not the father of my baby. She theatrically announced that the results of the test showed another man as the father of my baby. The room fell completely silent, and Edward, visibly disturbed, turned to face me. He asked me if what Daisy was saying was true. In shock, I shook my head and looked at Daisy, waiting for her to explain herself. My mother, without hesitation, asked Daisy what kind of nonsense she was peddling and why she would dare to fabricate such an outlandish story. My mother took the paper from Daisy and showed her that the name on the paper wasn't even mine. That was when Daisy started laughing. Her smirk grew wider as my friends exchanged confused glances with me. Daisy confessed that she had downloaded a fake paternity test off the internet and concocted this plan to prove a point. She claimed that she wanted to expose Edward for who he was and accused him of being abusive toward me. The whole room was in shock, not believing what was being said. I told Daisy she was out of her mind because my husband had never even raised his voice at me, let alone had been abusive. She then went on to argue that no man would be happy when his female partner earned more than him, and she suspected for a long time that Edward was extremely controlling. She gives random examples and how Edward got angry when she first mentioned the paternity test. I shouted at her to go ask Edward why he was mad. It was because she humiliated me in public when she said my child wasn't his. Then I told her that my husband had never mistreated me or locked me out of the house, and it seemed like she was projecting onto us. Her face turned bright red with embarrassment as I watched. I kept telling Daisy how sick I was of her constant jealousy throughout my life and how disgusting it was for her to turn my baby shower into such a chaotic scene. I made it known to all of them that Daisy had always conducted herself in such a manner, relaying that she would lie about me to my ex-boyfriends. Daisy just stood there, humiliated and speechless. My mother, upset, told her that she had crossed the line this time. And then, as if out of left field, her husband Charlie, who had been quiet until now, got up. The room watched in stunned silence as Charlie walked over to Daisy and handed her some papers. The air went from uncomfortable to utter pandemonium as guests started asking what the papers were. He said the marriage counseling wasn't obviously working, and he finally realized they were toxic for each other. He confessed he had been thinking about divorce for quite a while and was going to give her the papers that evening. However, since she liked making scenes, he could not manage to go back home with her. He told her he was done with her and then walked out of the baby shower. The room was left in an uneasy silence as Charlie's revelation hung in the air. Guests exchanged uncomfortable glances, unsure how to react to this unexpected and dramatic turn of events. Daisy just stood there, stunned and speechless, holding the divorce papers in her hands. Her plan to upstage everyone at the baby shower had totally backfired. Instead of stealing the show, she had just been served papers that would dissolve her own marriage. The joyous occasion had turned into a tense and somber affair as reality set in. Realizing that I had had enough drama for the night, I decided it was time to make my exit. I asked Edward if he could take me out of there, and he agreed without hesitation. I gave my mother a hug as I said goodbye, telling her she would call me later to check on me. Daisy tried to come over to me and apologize, but I didn't even look at her. Of course, my mind has been racing ever since. Everyone is in shock over what happened. I've been getting calls from people checking on me, some telling me how Daisy broke down in tears as soon as I left, and how my parents kicked her out and wouldn't even listen to her. I do feel quite a lot of pity for her, since she's now lost me, my parents, and even her husband. I am feeling rather guilty about yelling at her, though at that time it seemed justified. But now I wonder if it was wrong to expose her jealousy in front of everyone when she was trying to use a fake paternity test to stir up drama. Update: I just wanted to say a heartfelt thank you to people who took the time to read and comment on my story. The support, empathy, and advice I've received in the last week have been truly overwhelming. I am genuinely moved by the sense of community that Reddit has afforded me in these trying times. I've never posted on Reddit before, but after everything that happened with my sister, I felt like I needed some outside perspective. What my sister did was weird and cruel, and I agree with so many of your comments that she probably does need help. I also realize that I do need to have a stern talk with my parents and just officially cut her out of my life. I can't let her behavior affect my baby or my family any longer. Update 2. Hey everyone, it's been a month since my last update. I had a heart-to-heart with my parents, and they think it is better that we sever ties with Daisy. She feels absolutely no remorse at all over what had happened, and she's gone on to tell people that I overreacted about her prank and embarrassed her in front of her husband, telling him all about her past, supposedly the cause for her divorce. Charlie has since contacted my parents and apologized for how he treated Daisy in the past. Charlie shared with us the real reason why he would ask Daisy to leave their home. It wasn't because he was abusive, but because during their arguments, Daisy would become violent and would hit and kick him. It shocked me to hear that, because I always thought it was all Charlie's fault. He even showed us pictures of his broken nose and black eyes. I'm honestly relieved that Charlie loved her enough not to involve the authorities, because if he had, Daisy might have ended up in jail. It's clear that they had a toxic relationship, and I'm actually glad they're getting a divorce. My parents spoke with Daisy and made it clear she was no longer welcome at either their house or mine. Daisy tried to cry and manipulate the situation, but my mom had finally lost it after what Daisy had pulled at my baby shower. My parents have told Daisy straight out that she needs to go see a psychiatrist because something is definitely not right with her. She has, however, refused to get help, but instead told them that they are being unfair, showing partiality to me at her expense. In return, I have blocked her on all platforms, and so has Edward. We have also installed security cameras at our house, so in case she shows up one day, we will report her to the concerned authority. It's been 8 months since my last update, and I'm happy to share that I've recently given birth to my son. The pregnancy had its tough moments, but I'm so grateful that our baby is finally here. We named him Alex, and it's hard to believe I'm a mom. Our home now rings with his laughter and cries. Edward and I have to get used to being parents, but the bottom line is we're so happy to have him in our lives. We are enjoying all the moments with the baby, and my parents have been very supportive while I settle into motherhood. Edward's parents are coming to visit us next month. Daisy hasn't given us any trouble, and the last time I heard, she and Charlie divorced. She wanted to move to a different town, perhaps to begin anew. Though it grieves me that my sister is not included in this happy period, I do understand, as a mother, that one's child has to be shielded.